I would say I'm a very adventurous individual, very disciplined and structured with her day. But I feel like I'm adventurous in the sense that I like to take risks all the time. So I'll move to other countries to play football abroad. I'll take on challenges that others probably don't see the value in, but I know that it'll pay off in the long run. And so I'd say I'm a risk taker for sure. I come from a big family, so we are a family of 9. There's 7 kids, of course. All of them play football. I'm the third of 7. And so growing up, my dad played, and also my older siblings, and so did my younger siblings. So something that was natural in the family. And so when I was about 4 years old, that's when my soccer journey began. And it began just recreationally, just enjoying watching my older siblings playing as well for fun. And then throughout that pipeline, doing well, and then moving into the high performance, and then ultimately varsity athlete, and then going on to play pro. When my brothers wanted to be a professional soccer player, it totally made sense because they were on TV. It was very professional and the avenue was there. But professional women's soccer, I did watch, but the only times that I watched would be at the Olympics and the World Cup. Nothing would really be featured any other time. And so in my mind, it was female professional athletes didn't play club soccer, they just played for their country. And so that was my vision. Playing for my country would make me a professional athlete, and then I would have a traditional job outside of that. But as I grew older, and I think it was specifically when I was in university, when I thought, I love my academics, I love my athletics, how do I pursue both of them simultaneously? I had opportunities to go out to the States that was never on my mind at all. My dad always told me, maybe explore it or have conversations with the coaches, it doesn't hurt. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not leaving home. I want to stay as close to you all as possible. And so in my mind, the top 3 options were really York University, TMU now, and U of T. And when I was chatting with different coaches, and this is grade 11, 12 time, where that's when you kind of want to decide what school you're going to athletics wise, York just stole my heart right away. I remember I was invited to an ID camp. It definitely wasn't my best performance, but the coach saw something in me to still invite me out to training sessions where it was a longer trial period. And they were also watching us at club soccer as well. And within the first week, I remember our head coach, Carmen Asako, who is the master coach, he was like, I can totally see you playing in the formation that I envision. You'd be an important player for the school and so on. I shared my academic goals as well, and he thought it perfectly aligned. I learned more about the KIN program at York University, and that was something that was one of the top schools in the country for that department. It was also practical as well, and that's something that I wanted to do. And then the York women's team was just nationally ranked. So how do you say no to a nationally ranked team? I was actually the first full-on varsity athlete in my family, and I was told the first Afghan athlete as well in Canada, which I was really proud of because it was an opportunity for me to progress my academics and athletics at a high level. And also my parents were originally from Afghanistan, and so they were deprived of a lot growing up just because of the war and being displaced and being refugees and having to resettle and rebuild their lives multiple times. And so it was kind of like they sacrificed everything for me and my siblings when we were younger. And now it was my moment to kind of work towards giving back to them. It's funny, I've always wanted to be either a doctor or a teacher. And so early on in my kin days, did very well in my first year, even though there were a lot of tears that came with it. I just wasn't prepared for that transition, to be honest. And my first semester, it was a good reality check of understanding that you're a student athlete and the student aspect always comes before. And in order to even maintain any scholarships, you want to make sure that you're doing well academically. But luckily, my classes were full year classes. So I worked my butt off to get exceptional grades, and I had to get 95s in every midterm pretty much in order to get A's and B's. That's how bad I did first semester, but it all worked out and I'm glad that happened. Teaching, really, I felt compelled to it because I was also coaching as well, and I love that aspect of sport. There are so many teachers that had a positive impact in my life, and I want to go above and beyond and be an exceptional leader in that space. And so that's why I went on to do that, and I loved it. During COVID-19, I was in my first year of teachers college, and that's when I was a varsity athlete. That was my 5th year of competing as a student athlete, but my first year of teachers college. And unfortunately, COVID had hit after that season. So 2019, we were able to play, but 2020, of course, in March, that's when the restrictions started happening. But that's when I was also coaching OPDL soccer, which is part of the provincial pathway. And we still competed under restrictions and had training sessions, and even high performance as an athlete playing in League One as well. We were still training and competing, but the newcomer community, underserved communities, all that community programming was pretty much just dismissed because they didn't have the funding. And so that's actually when I developed or established the nonprofit organization and co-founded Scarborough Simbas, which uses sport to help ease the settlement journey of refugees and newcomers to Canada. And so that has been very meaningful, of course, providing completely free programming and avenues for them to resettle through the power of sport. But during that time as well, you saw how well sport was able to support them, but many of those kids still struggled in their schooling communities. And so for me, sport, education, all of that is just a holistic approach. They all are so interconnected. While I was in teachers college as well, so many good opportunities, but I was so torn between the two that I thought maybe my way of staying involved in sport was just playing semi-professional at home and then coaching as well. And I was also assistant coach of York University's women's soccer team as well when I graduated. So I felt very fulfilled, but I knew that if I didn't play professional women's sport, that would be something that I would live regretting all my life. And I just hate to regret anything. But nonetheless, still ended up graduating in 2021, went on to my first teaching contract, full-time teaching contract in September of 2021. And it's interesting because that summer actually changed the trajectory of some of my decisions. So in August of 2021, unfortunately, the Taliban gained control of Afghanistan. And so I am the captain of the Afghanistan women's national team that currently is not operating because women's sport is banned in Afghanistan. But they had called me and asked me to help evacuate the Afghan youth national team and the players and staff members because their lives were at risk, and the possibilities were endless as to what could have happened to the young ladies and the families that were all involved in sport. Because you have to understand, playing sport in Afghanistan as a female, you're almost this fierce advocate in championing gender equity. And I don't want to say not everyone supports it. There are definitely supporters in this space, but there are definitely individuals, and specifically referring to the Taliban, that are totally against the growth of, female advocacy or females being involved in other non-traditional industries. And so when that had happened, I was at home in Toronto. I had no clue what to do, obviously, but I told them that I would try my best to find a solution. And so I was trying to connect with anyone and everyone possible that I thought would help, like organizations, humanitarian lawyers. I didn't get the responses that I was looking for, unfortunately, but didn't give up. And it's interesting, that day, a great mentor of mine had called me. She's an Iranian American. She used to coach the Iranian national team, and her and I met in Uzbekistan when Afghanistan and Iran played each other in 2018. She just called me, very empathetic, and felt really bad about the situation in Afghanistan, and asked how she could help. And I told her I was trying to evacuate these players. And the way the Afghan national team works is half the players lived inside the country and half lived outside, like myself, and were raised and were part of the diaspora. And so when we did have training camps pre-Taliban as well, because of the safety and security situation in the country, our training camps were actually never in Afghanistan. It was always in the States or anywhere else in the Middle East. And so you can see how sensitive the issue was. And so long story short, she was finally able to connect me to her, she was able to connect me to her older sister, who finally we were able to connect with intelligence officers and individuals from the White House and in the State Department and so on, where I sat on a Zoom meeting with them and shared the sensitivity behind everything, and they were willing to support me on this mission. Made it clear that, you have to steer the ship, but we're on board to help you and do whatever it takes. And so that's when the evacuation took off. I'm not going to go into detail because it's a very long story, but essentially it was a time where there was no commercial flights leaving the country. All the borders were closed. There were Taliban checkpoints throughout the nation. And it was extremely difficult to get out of the country because you couldn't. Everything was closed. And so despite that, after well over a month of failing and trying dozens of times, we were finally able to persevere and get them out on a chartered flight and get them asylum to Portugal. And so in September of 2021, end of September, we were able to get them to Portugal. And I was 3 weeks into my teaching contract at the time. And, we were working 24/7 on this mission. I'm in Toronto, have to work on the Afghanistan time zone, on different time zones in the US as well. And you have to be awake all the time in order to execute this. And so when it finally happened, was definitely relieved, but was invited to Portugal by the donors and government officials to go over just for 3 days, surprise the girls, and run a few training sessions. And ended up going, but I was asked to constantly extend my stay to help stabilize the situation, which I kept doing to the point where I was asked to live in Portugal and help build a resettlement plan and support the families. And so I ended up leaving behind my nonprofit, my coaching role at York, applying and my teaching contract in order to live there and support the families, from housing to coaching to you name it, really, to support them. And while I was there, obviously the Taliban had banned women's sport, and that's when I founded and established the unofficial Afghan youth national team, which is called Ancienne FC. We don't get any funding from the national program or FIFA or anything, just really almost operate like a national program where it's training camps and competitions. We go to youth international cups in Europe and so on and compete, just to make sure that our purpose and our goal remain steadfast. But during that time, in February of 2022, I actually returned back home, and I realized how inspired those young ladies were, and they saw me as a role model, but because of the academic and athletic success, not because I was, exceptional in that space, but because they hadn't really seen Afghan women. They were not highlighted in this way. And mind you, I never had social media growing up, and so they didn't even know me well at all. These girls, they feel inspired, but they told me that, it's incredible, but an Afghan player from the national team will probably never play professional women's sport. And I was like, that is incorrect. I'm going to prove this wrong right now because I've always wanted to do it, and I know I'll regret if I don't. And also, let me show these young girls that we are capable of doing it as well. And so went on to play professional women's sport. All the transfer windows were closed at the time I decided to play, except Turkey. So I ended up playing half a season in Turkey, but knowing that I had a contract in the Netherlands for another 2 years after that. Now I'm at Calgary Wild, being able to do that in our own backyard at home. This is a historic league. Us Canadians can return back home and compete and also drive the sport even further. There's so many trailblazers that have provided this opportunity for us, and now I think it's our responsibility to continue to push it forward. I think younger Farkhunda would say thank you for not giving up on yourself and believing in your dreams, but also not losing sight of your roots and remaining steadfast on that and staying connected to who you are. But also, the more you grow, the more you give. And that's what I feel like is very important to me. I definitely enjoy all these opportunities, but I know that other people deserve it just as much as me. And so how can I ensure that they also can reap the same benefits? Never underestimate your impact. You're never confined to your role at all. So beyond who you are in the professional landscape, there's so much that you can do to get involved, to support others, but also seek guidance from other individuals and just understand that we don't know everything and we're on this constant quest to grow. It's you against you.